Good morning, everybody. Stoyan, you had something to say, maybe?
Well, good morning. I was going to say, so you already said it, but also we don't have a chair for today, and I want to do the roll call first, and then I have a proposal for a chair. So if we can start with the roll call first.
All righty, getting kicked off with the roll call. Tony Doan is not here. Chris Seaman,
Here.
Corey Thomas,
I'm here.
Dave Cocut,
Here.
Ken Brulette,
Here.
Kevin Marr, Mike Six, Paul Clark,
Here.
Ken Tai, Ricky Campbell, and Zach Tuck. So we're just one shy of a quorum at the moment. I'll go ahead and do a roll call of the building tag to see if there's anybody here on that one.
Okay.
And then we'll maybe go back and revisit anybody who might be joining up just a little bit late. For the building code tag, Todd Bayruther, Adam Phillips, Alan Spalding, Andrea Smith, Bill Mybush, Charles Calvano, Chris Seaman is also part of this tag. Corey Thomas is already part of this tag. Dave Germer, Michael Barth, Susan Kaufman,
I'm here.
Roger Heringa, Sean Karlstrom,
I'm here.
and Will Rodriguez. All righty, going back to just look at the guest list in here for the fire code tag. People that were not here, Kevin Marr. Not showing him in the guest list. Mike Six. Not seeing that name either. Ken Tai. Not in attendance. Ricky Campbell. And Zach Tuck. So it looks like that's all we have at the moment.
So we don't have a quorum.
Correct.
I was going to ask.
Quinn's on his way. Stoyan.
Who?
He's coming.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh,
Quinn's
Quinn.
on his way.
Quinn's on his way.
I was going to ask Dave Cockett. He's the most experienced here. Dave, do you want to take over the meeting and act as the chair for this technical advisory group?
I can.
Thank you. So we need to review and approve the agenda, but since we don't have a quorum yet, anybody from the public who wants to introduce themselves, feel free if you want.
This is Ron Wright, just attending. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Tom Handy. I'm a Whitman County Commissioner and new to the council, so I'll probably see a bunch of you as
Welcome.
time goes on here.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Quinn's high here.
Gotcha.
You were the most wanted person for this morning.
Music's my ears. We're supposed.
Ardell Jalla, SDCI.
Micah
And with-
Chappelle, DCI, and also a building code council member representing code officials.
Barry Kurth, Fire Marshal for the City of Mount Vernon.
Okay, so we have the quorum now. Dave, you can take over.
Okay. So this is our force. The building code tag has reviewed a proposed requirement for changing. We have previously in the past removed the R4 occupancy from the IRC and IFC and IBC. There is movement to bring the R4 occupancy back in. Some of the fire tag members sat in on the IBC meetings and basically went through some of the proposals, looked at some of the language that was put together. So we'd like to be able to do today is now introduce these changes to the International Fire Code tag and get comments from us to be able to move forward to get the R4 occupancy returned back into the state code, just like it is in the model code. I think that's basically the main piece of this meeting today. And we can go ahead and probably start looking at the document at this point.
And one more, which is a formality, but we need to formally approve the agenda.
That's right. I remember that. It was since I've been some meetings. So first off, we need to review and approve the agenda. We have the 4 items here. We've done item 1 already. We'll be doing the off-cycle rule review. And once we're done with that, the meeting will be adjourned. So I'm looking for motion to approve the agenda.
This is Chris. I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank
This
you.
is Quinn. I'll second that.
That's moved and seconded. Any other discussion on the agenda? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We now move on to item number 3, off-cycle rule, discussion of the adoption of the R4 occupancy group. Dustin, am I passing this on to you?
I'm passing it on to Stoyan. He was gonna share the Word document, or would you like me to share it?
I
Stoyan?
will share it because I wanna work on it if it's needed.
All right, Stein.
Here it is. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so what I have here is the work that was done at the technical IBC, excuse me, technical advisory group. You have access to this document. I added a simple rationale below each section, and I did that because many of these sections they're overlapping. You have the same sections in the fire code. So if some of you didn't attend the IBC technical advisory groups, you can go back to the front, the first 3 or 4 pages and double check what was done and why. And then I will go to the fire code. Sorry about that. Okay, here it is. Again, most of this was discussed already, and most of you attended the IBC technical advisory groups, but it's open for discussion. Now we are talking about the fire code only.
So we just want to go through section by section here. If you have any comments from this description.
I'm okay either way.
We've got a hand raised from Ken Brulette.
Go ahead, Ken.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Scroll down just a little bit if you could to the condition 2. This is probably one of my concerns is the condition 1 and condition 2, and just trying to figure out how these are getting classified, and knowing that even ICC states that it's very easy to move from a condition 1 to condition 2. And the big thing on the fire side of it is the sprinkler system jumps to a 13R for condition 2. But part of the definition, it says who require limited verbal or physical assistance. And I'm wondering if this proponent has a definition of that, what that means, anything they would like to bring forward to help explain what that means.
Can you tell me the section? I got lost a little bit. Which section you want to see?
It's this where it says residential group R4. So that's in the definition. And if you scroll down, there should be a condition 1 and a condition 2, which you do not show. But it's important because it's part of that section, and you're not showing it. So I was hoping that you could show condition 1 and condition 2 as it reads in the model code. So we can ask the proponent, what does that mean? Limited verbal or physical assistance, and if they have some guidance for that.
This is Ron Wright. I was the one that put together this particular component of the proposal, and the condition 1 and condition 2 weren't contemplated as being changed in any way from the model code. And the response that I can give as in my experience with the licensing of the residential treatment facilities is that there is a functional plan created and submitted to the state of Washington regarding the level of acuity and ability of residents receiving treatment. And it's typically in that review that it's evaluated as to whether it would be a condition 1 or a condition 2. And again, these conditions are, as you know, fairly recent in code language, but we have in recent experience used the evaluation by the agency performing the services to understand what level of ability the residents have and how they are falling into that category. And I'm not sure that would answer your response, but that's where we end up typically coming forth with that information to a building official regarding the establishment of whether it's condition 1 or 2. And we're using the language, as you mentioned, in the definitions right there that's highlighted.
So are you aware of G5-21 that John Williams submitted for the 24 code, that it does define limited verbal or physical assistance? And wondering if you'd like to look at that and see if we would like to bring that forward to help explain what that means.
Is that applicable to the R4 or is it applicable
Yes.
to I1 condition 2? I mean, was that it's just an R4 definition? Because I haven't seen.
I wanted to, so this is Paul Clark with, I'm with the Department of Health, and so condition 1 and condition 2 are the same for I1 condition 2 and I1 condition 1. So these designations have been added to the R4, but they've always been part of the description for I1 occupancies. And so they're just additional language that kind of tells what type of person is in that particular occupancy. So it's the same for the I1 occupancies. So the reason, really the difference between condition 1 and condition 2, as you mentioned, is the fire alarm or fire sprinkler system. And so these components, they give an additional, so in a general sense, in looking at the R4 occupancies, these have been kind of tested at the national level in condition 1 and condition 2, but not really been adopted in Washington State. So these components, although they have merit, but they are part of the kind of evaluation when it comes to the occupancy that is kind of chosen for the occupants less than 16 residents.
Are they the same? Is this the same definition as for instance, I1 condition 2? Is the condition 2 for I1 the same exact definition as what's being now shown for R4? Or is there
Correct.
a change that makes the R4 different in terms of establishing conditions?
No, they're the same definition.
Okay. I think that was the point. And because the R4, the intent in the model code of the R4 is to be this effectively the same as the I in a number of ways. It's just the number of occupants is less.
Correct.
So as long as, at least from my position in putting this forth, as long as the conditions defined for the I occupancies are the same as the conditions being defined for the R4, that is acceptable and in keeping with the way that we basically followed through with the establishment of the conditions so far. So I guess I didn't want to see any different in the R4 versus the I, and it sounds like that's not the case. So that all seems fine.
So I'll go back to my original question. Limited verbal or physical assistance. There's not a definition right now.
Is there something in the John Williams?
G5, yes, G5-21 actually gives it a definition now. And it also tags on some of that language in the definition of custodial care. I would think it would be prudent to look at that to make sure that that's agreeable with the proponent, because that's what people are going to be turning to be looking for. How do I find out if you're going to, when do you bump to a condition 2 that now you were condition 1 with the 13D system, and now all of a sudden I have to have a 13R. So I would think that the proponents who are building these facilities might want to consider that definition to see if maybe we should be putting the 13R system in up front, so we meet those condition 2 if we do have to make that change.
And I guess my point is that if the G5-21 applies across the board to both the R and I occupancies,
It does.
Then that is 90% of the review. I mean, I guess it's applicable that if there is a condition, whether there's 24 occupants and the level of acuity changes, it's the same as if there's 8. Is that there needs to be more life safety. So I don't see an issue. I guess I'd like to see that if there's anything that I mean, this is more applicable to both the I and the R rather than just being an R issue.
It is, but we're discussing the R4, and in the condition 2, it talks about limited verbal or physical assistance, and I don't know what that is. And does that mean just helping somebody to a walker? And does that mean now they're condition 2?
Sorry, Ken, can you clarify where's the G5? And you mentioned John Williams.
G5-21 is the code change proposal that got approved as modified for the 2024 IBC and IFC. And since it was presented by John Williams, who was representing the healthcare committee, just thought it was important to bring this forward since he seemed to be necessary to get it into the code. I'm trying to help define this. I was hoping that you might want to take a look at it and see if that would be part of your proposal, is to put it in.
Let's go ahead and go to Micah. You have a question, Micah?
Yeah, I think I know where Ken's kind of going with this. I think it'll be beneficial based on the answer we got from Ron. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but you indicated that you're providing a lot of information for the licensing portion of that to the Department of Health. Are you providing that same information to the building official to make this interpretation on how to do your plan review? I think that's where Ken is getting at, in my opinion, is you need clarification on your operational side of it so the code official can correctly enforce the code. We're not going to go to the Department of Health for that information. We're just going to go off of your plans and what's in the code. So I think that's what Ken is trying to get at, is additional information to correctly steer the code official to apply your codes correctly without having to get the licensed information that we typically really don't see, I don't think. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, or
Nope,
It-
you're right. You're right. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Is a poor building official has to classify these buildings,
Yeah.
and there's a big difference between condition 1 and condition 2 comes to sprinkler system.
Right.
Yeah,
And then unfortunately, I missed the last part of it. I know we have another topic to bring up on section 420 of the building code as well. We did miss an errata item in 420.3 that's not included in the document you're showing here today. Thanks. We can discuss that further later.
So I think what I'd like to have is we're talking about a proposal that we haven't seen, Ken. Is there some way that you can get that so we can put it on the screen so the tag can take a look at the proposed language or the language that got approved for the 2024?
Yeah, I will download it and I will send it to Stoyan, and then maybe he can, because I have no power in
Put
this.
it up on the
Yeah,
screen.
put it up. So, yep, I'll do that in a second.
so
I have a clarified question, because we are a little bit exceeding the scope of this
exactly.
technical advisory group, but my question is, if it's unclear how condition 2 is enforced, and this is an existing language for I occupancies, then how it is enforced for I occupancies?
And that would be my issue, is that we're stepping further beyond the proposal, which is the adoption of the R4 group occupancy. And we're now looking at a pre-existing clarification issue that applies to R and I. And it's almost a separate topic. And it appears that it's been proposed as a separate topic for later code inclusion, but it's becoming, I guess I'm trying to get us back to the R4 and not to, this appears to be a separate issue that isn't related, other than obviously making a change or a decision on R4. It would be helpful to have this particular item resolved. I will point out that in all of the facilities that our office has pushed through in local permit and jurisdictions, we provide and typically are asked for the functional plan that I mentioned as part of the evaluation by the local building officials. So it's not mandated that they receive that, but in all cases, that's been part of the justification for how we have basically determined whether it's condition 1 or 2. Mostly it's been trying to have a change from condition 2 to 1. Right now, the code is that all RTFs are I1 condition 2, and then they've now been allowed to be reviewed to be different than that. But we've always been condition 2 no matter what. So that now the opening of the R4 has basically allowed for this review by local jurisdictions of whether it's I1 or 2. And again, I think it's a separate issue from the R4 adoption, but it's more related to the R4 and the I as a separate discussion.
Chris Seaman, please.
Yeah, I think I disagree with that assessment. I think that we don't have the issue today because we don't adopt R4. And so by adopting R4, we've created the issue of having to interpret it. So I think it's fair game to try and see if adding that future language that's already been, looks like it's going to be in the 24 cycle. If we're going to all of a sudden jump in and have R4 available, we should have it available in a way that we can enforce most consistently across the state.
Okay, Micah, do you have another question? You have your hand up.
I'm going to parrot Chris there. Again, you're asking us to go from the more robust systems from an I condition to an R4 condition that may be less robust. In any clarifications that we're getting for the I occupancies, we definitely want to see for the R occupancies as well. And so I agree that the importance of those items moving forward, especially to get this approved at the state level. Thanks.
So I had a question, Stoyan. Functionally, basically, if we're going to be providing some modifications that the IBC tag hasn't seen, does this have to go back to the IBC tag for them to approve any changes?
Yes.
And I know that we're on a timeline of trying to get this to the council to move this forward. That's something that should be kept in mind as well. Is it important enough that we want to delay the adoption of the R4 occupancy into the codes?
I can show the language that Ken just sent me, so. give me a
Is this not it that I have on the screen now?
No, it's a new proposal that, yeah, thank you. Right here.
So we have as a proposal for the 2024 is defining the specific what plural limited verbal or physical assistance is.
Didn't this get passed though? So I don't think it's a proposal so much as it is coming to the 2024.
Yeah, it was voted on and approved.
It was modified slightly, but the language essentially remains the same.
Without specifying, I mean, my comment won't be related to this particular proposal, but we have big issues with this adoption of new language in advance, and it's not the time to talk about this. I'm working on some changes to the bylaws and the council policies and procedures, but on a really wild estimate, we have about 28 sections that we adopted in advance, and the language changed, and we keep adopting something that is keep changing in the model code without evaluating. So this is one of the issues, and again, not specific to this, but it's just a general comment when we are adopting a language adopted in the future codes. This is all I want to say.
Yeah, I think from my position, since I get to be chair, I'm looking at it as that I think this is a benefit to the code users that are involved with it, but it is teetering on that little piece. So this is not necessarily specifically in our general scope of incorporating the R4 occupancy. It's a clarification of the R4 occupancy. So I'm a little bit torn on it. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it should be something that we want to consider putting into this, but I'm also concerned about not having the IBC tag, having this review as well. So we're kind of coming in with something later. But again, I had some concerns about how the original tag was kind of put together anyways. So I'll just see what anybody else has to say. Micah, you're next.
Thanks. Again, I think that some of these changes are important, and just because we're on a time crunch, but that's a self-imposed time crunch to some extent. The full council asked the tags to evaluate putting R4 back into the codes. It didn't say they couldn't add additional modifications to have those tags be comfortable with putting those putting R4 back in, or adding necessary clarification that code officials need or would like to have, even if they're an upcoming code change. I know that, there are some people that don't like pre-adopting or early adopting code changes. However, Washington State is a very progressive code and advanced code state, and I don't see us going backwards on that. So I do encourage us to look forward to things that are coming, and we understand that they're beneficial, and that's why they're coming. However, the national process is very long and tiresome. So if we have the opportunity to adopt those early, we do. And I think things like this are important to maintain keeping those code changes in the state early. So again, we're not just tasked with only evaluating the R4 base code language. The tags were tasked by the full council to evaluate putting R4 back into the code, and that should include anything else that necessitates the enforcement of this correctly and consistently. Thanks.
Okay, can we get the original language from the IBC back on the screen? Because I want to make sure that
You need the model code? The model code?
just the proposed change that the IBC group tag passed. So I just want to make sure that the members from the IFC that did not get the opportunity to sit down with the or listening on the IBC tag review of it, take a look at the language that IBC has in. And basically, unless there's any more discussion on this, looking to see if anybody has any proposed modifications to what the IBC tag agreed to.
Well, the idea for inviting both IBC and IFC was that, you know, issues like this would be discussed when both technical advisory groups are present. And unfortunately, Mike and Ken didn't raise the concern. Again, I'm not a technical expert on that, but
yeah.
Here is what was discussed.
That's a little unfair, Stoyan, just because I didn't bring it up last
I
meeting.
agree.
Just because in the building code tag, they're not all in attendance today. So we were holding joint meetings, and just because it wasn't brought up at the first meeting, that's just an unfair statement.
And I apologize too. I don't have, you know, all the time to come to these meetings every other day or every week. You know, we do volunteer our time here at the SBCC, and I do have a full-time job as well. So I can't make every meeting. So that is kind of uncalled for to call out specific folks that weren't in attendance that have opinions in today's meeting. That's why you have these open public meetings.
I said
So that was totally uncalled for.
With all my respect, I'm not in a hurry. You know, the council was in a hurry, and there were some issues with this R4. So if you can take all the time you need.
I guess
so at this point, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't even know how many other issues there are that are being clarified later on. And it feels to me as though what's happening is we're looking at very, very forward comments and bringing them back into what will be a short term. I mean, the approval here was for the R4 occupancy. And yes, there is clarification required or proposed to come later regarding the classifications of condition 1 and 2, but to now go back and require all those future clarifications to be put into this current proposal, which was listed as an impending need, an immediate need. They've already been reviewed and discussed for later. They'll be coming, and now to come back and basically slow down and completely rework to have us re-meet all again based on a clarification of language that's coming anyway, and not get this process through and delay it even further, just keeps these facilities from being used as R4. So I feel like it's just going to keep going. What else is there?
Okay, Ardell.
Sorry. Hi, Ardell Della, building official for City of Seattle. I just want to offer this to the committee. I'm neutral on whether this definition, this gets added. It is helpful, but we do, as has been stated, we do have this interpretation today for the I occupancies. We do rely on information from the applicant to demonstrate whether they are C1, C2. So to my colleagues, Ken and Micah, I do appreciate, looking forward and getting the best code language we can right now. But from my standpoint, I am neutral on that. Relative to Dave's comment, is there language here that should be that was missed, to be honest, at the last committee? I do think there is a errata that was brought in section 420.2 that should also be brought in for section 420.3. That's not looking forward. That's looking back at 2018 errata that is relative to R4 that I think should be included relative to horizontal separation. There is an existing exception there that needs to be stricken. Stoyan, I can forward you that language. So 420.2 exceptions 1, 2, and 3 are stricken here in 420.2. However, there's another section 420.3 that also had errata.
I think we'll go through those at that point.
Okay,
so
thank you.
We'll stick to this part of this at this point. So
let me clarify here. 420.3 is not here because here we're working for 2021 IBC.
Yeah.
And initially it was here and I took it off because we discussed it at IBC. There shouldn't be. we were deleting this exception from the WAC.
Got it. Thank
in
you.
2021.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to again point out that, well, I guess not again point out, but I would like to point out that, you know, the people in this room are the most active and aware code officials and professionals. So when we see there being an opportunity for confusion, that's among us, the most in it people. So when we're talking about jurisdictions that don't have the capacity to put somebody on a tag like this, or have the capacity to have someone go to trainings and things, we're introducing a whole new thing that we've excluded as a state for a long time. So anything we can do to make it clear and enforceable from day one is huge. So I don't think it's a waste of time, even if it delays adoption a little bit, to make sure it's good, enforceable, clear code.
Okay, thank you. Micah?
That was very well said, Chris. Thank you so much for that. Because I agree. I do want to point out too, with this process, I'm okay with sending things back to the tag, building code tag, and taking a little longer. These topics were brought up over 2 years ago, and there was requests to provide additional code changes last code cycle. So rushing through a series of rapid special tag meetings specifically for this, when this could have been brought up 2 years ago and gone through the regular tag process over the last year and a half, it would have, you know, it's okay to take a little more time instead of trying to rush this through. I understand there's a need, but the need is not new. It has been around for a few years now because this was brought up by Department of Health 2.5 or 3 years ago. So I think if we do need to take more time, we should be aware that we should take that time to do so and get it right, as Chris said. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna leave it up to the tag at this point because let's move that back up to that section we're talking about. So what we're looking to do with the IFC is, I'm open for a motion.
So Dave, this is Quinn here. I think from what I'm hearing, no one is really against the R4. I think most of us are in agreement that we need to add that definition. So if you need a motion, I would make a motion that that we would approve this as long as we add that definition.
Let me add the definition. Okay, I want to clarify that. So that's a motion to add the definition to the proposed changes for the R4.
This is Ken, I'll second it.
Then moved and seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
If we could include all the definitions that were in G5 that included up above for custodial care.
Quinn, was that your original motion? Was all of those or just that one?
Yeah, I'll include all the rest.
Okay, so let's amend. I think that's an amendment because I think it was original thing. And Ken, you seconded, so that you're
Yeah,
accepting that.
and just to clarify that there, and Ardell brought up the fact that this proposal was modified slightly at the committee level, I believe. So I would just want to have staff just verify the final approval language with ICC, but it does give us a definition.
Okay, so modify the proposed language, the proposed motion to the current accepted, approved, and denied for ICC.
Yes,
language.
thank you.
Can you accept that?
I do. Yeah, that's what I initially meant in my
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
If somebody can help staff and provide the correct language, I would really appreciate it.
Do you not have ICC access, CTP access?
I do, but I'm working on 3 other off-cycle rules and the insert pages, and I'm helping Wabo to publish the codes.
I'll go ahead and do it. I'll look into it.
Okay. All right, let's take it to just the members of the IFC tag vote. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's move forward. Next discussion item.
Ooh,
And we can
was
kind of
it-
go through and just to kind of explaining that we've done that. We basically made modification to the definition. Do we see any changes to the R4 designation shown on the screen? Not hear anything. Let's go ahead and move on down to the next section. And we're kind of keeping in mind something that the IBC tag learned is there were particular items where sections that the R4 was not taken out of the codes. We're going to see some of those as well. So basically, Troy, give us a little background on this particular section.
sorry, which one?
The looks like 10, 2, 14.
Maybe I can chime in. This was part of
Okay.
my original proposal, but during the building code tag, we eliminated or I rescinded this particular request and did not I didn't ask for the R4 to be included within this section. So that was the decision of the building code tag, was not to include the R4 in this section.
This is why you see the R4 stricken.
Okay, well, that would actually be an amendment, or is that
No, it's not an
It's just-
amendment. It just
okay.
Ron is withdrawing his proposal.
okay? That's good. Next, I'd say Ken.
Regarding the
Can
section.
you have a question?
Yeah, so does that mean that in the base code language, the R4 is there, correct?
Yes.
But
I
in your
think-
proposal, you want Washington State to strike it?
No, no,
And
no,
the
no.
Proposal's been removed.
Okay.
The
Proposal's been
initial
removed, but
proposal,
we're
yeah.
returning to the model
And-
code language.
And then are you not going in order through the code? You're not gonna go to chapter table 405.3, or is that coming later?
Let me clarify something I lied unintentionally. So in the model code language, R4 is not there. Okay, so
Right.
Ron was adding R4 and the agreement that the IBC technical advisory group was to go with the model code language. So sorry, I misled you a little bit.
So-
R4 is not in the model code.
And this language is part of the state amendment to this particular model code section, which I was including the R4 in the same amendment. And I have, based on the conversation and the back and forth with the building code tag, I rescinded that. It was decided that it was not applicable, or that it shouldn't be put there. And so I agreed, and I rescinded the proposal to add into the state amendment the reference to R4 for this particular the controlled egress.
So the section will return back to the model code language, no change from the state level.
Correct.
Here is the state amendment. In this section, it's in blue and in exceptions 1 and 2. And it will show up in WAC without the R4.
Okay, Ken, you mentioned one of the other sections that you had. with,
I just didn't know during this meeting, are you doing Washington amendments and then going back to the beginning of the fire code and looking at the base code language? Because if you're going in order of the code, we missed table 405.3 to discuss the R4 in there.
Okay, so do we have that in this?
Are you
IFC?
talking about the fire code?
Yeah, we are talking about the fire code, yeah.
Hey, I asked the question.
Yes.
So table
So-
405.3, are we,
There was, we got 405 there, 405.3. So it is
right
included in
here.
this, is in this
Okay.
discussion.
just be further down? Okay, so we're not going in order. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
No,
that did confuse me a little bit.
First, you will see the Washington Administrative Code sections in the Washington Administrative Code. After we finish with that, we'll get to the model code.
Got it. Thanks.
That there's not included in the amendment. So, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so that section has been removed. So we move on down to exit travel distance. No changes there.
Here is
Oh, the R4 in the note,
Yeah.
okay.
and we are adding this.
Adding the
because-
R4 back into the state. So basically, we're going back to the model language with this one as well.
That's correct.
Okay. Any comments on tag on those? And I think that the general consensus that the IBC tag had with the discussions we had is if the intent is get it back to the model code. So if we can remove the amendments to go back to the model code, that's what we want to be able to do. So. Okay, section 1019. Yes, we had the R4 occupancy was there before.
So this is the
Current
current amendment, and we are moving back to the model code.
Right, so this amendment will be removed.
Okay, so now we are
Thanks.
back to the model code.
Okay.
This is not in WAC.
Can we go back to that table with that footnote where you added R4 to the R3? Where
Right
it says
here?
back there. Yep. So it says 903.3.1.3. Are we going to be okay with that? Because if you look at 903, there's a group R4, I believe. I could be wrong. Sorry, I was just kind of stuck on there still. So I just wanted to bring it up to see if everyone else is okay with that.
Yeah, it's just going back to the model code. So we're actually striking the amendment and just going back to the model code.
Okay, just double checking.
Okay, so these are code sections that did not have amendments, so currently have the R4 in them. With it, we have not amended them out. Quinn, you had a question?
Sorry, forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. So do we have basically what we did with the IBC tag, just what they went through and they said, do we have any issues, concerns? I think the basic premise of this is that we want to be able to make sure that the R4 language is in there. I leave it to the tag as to look through and say, is this acceptable to accept that we're not changing anything? That's current language that's in there. So does anybody have any concerns with basically retaining what's currently in the model code that hasn't been amended out from this date? And I think we could continue on down with this so that nobody has any concerns. It just shows, I think essentially it shows where we've already got the R4 still in the codes because we didn't amend it out. So these are not amendments. This is just the model code language as it sits. And here we have the table 405.3.
Here is the table.
Okay, continue scrolling a little bit of screen at a time.
So you had comments on the table, or you just didn't see the table? I'm not.
It was just the order that you were presenting. I didn't know if we were going in chronological order or not, but
Right.
you
Yeah,
explained it.
I think that, and I forgot what we had done. We had done the amendments first, and then going back through the model code and seeing if we had some other sections that we had effectively missed when the amendments were done before.
So 405.3, or I'm sorry, 405.5, the time, do you show that?
Is it already an existing?
It's right here.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. Okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
So now we're in chapter 6. Chapter 8.
Can you go back to that table? When it talks about sprinklered for R4, the footnotes, does it?
This table?
Yeah, exactly, interior finishings. And for the R4,
Then let's go back up, see what it says there.
yeah, I just want to
it's there,
see.
Ken. I see what you're asking. It's there, it looks like.
It is
Yeah.
Okay.
Item L.
L, is that what it
Applies
is?
to vertical
Yeah.
access.
Okay, so that
passageways.
says 13 or 13R,
Mhm.
Yep.
but it would not allow it would, so condition 1 occupancies would not be considered sprinklered. Just want to make sure that's clear, right?
If they have a D system, yeah,
Yeah, if they have a D system, it would not be considered sprinklered.
for the purposes of this finishes,
For
yeah.
finishes, yes, yeah,
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, thanks.
all the Christmas trees. Okay, we're in our other sections here. Don't see that because basically talking about the condition 1, 2. Already kind of called out to this one. Make sure everybody's okay with that. That's the annex 13D discussion for the R4 condition 1. We had R4 in here a lot, didn't we? Okay, thing with chapter 10, so interfacing between IBC and ISC, so we didn't change things out of the IFC. Then the tag, the IBC tag just basically went to the model code, so we're really not changing anything through this that I am aware of that the IBC tag would have put it back in, would have removed the amendment, so. And that one's not yellowed, but we do have the I4 on the table there. And we have chapter 11 requirements. Well, we would have a lot more amendments.
Yep. Chapter 12.
Mhm.
Appendix B.
And appendix is
I think that's
adopted, so in general, I mean, and I don't know if we don't necessarily need to go through the IBC changes unless I think those that are here would have good comments for that, but Michael, you have a question?
I did have a question on Appendix B. If I'm reading WAC 5154A 03 correctly, the state does not adopt Appendix B. Is that incorrect, Stoyan? Wouldn't that be listed in WAC? Okay. Just wanted to verify.
Yeah, I made mention as we're going by there and the state doesn't adopt the appendices, so.
okay.
That's a general note.
Well, is this appendix available for local adoption? I guess
All the appendices are available for a local adoption.
yeah. So we don't need to do anything with it, but that's why it's in this document.
Yeah. Okay.
So Dave, can I just bring
Go ahead,
up
Ken.
what I brought up at the IBC is I'd like to get the input again from the proponent regarding 1031 emergency escape and rescue, where it's required for R4s now, but the proponent was saying that they don't provide it, or I think Al Spalding was talking about, well, there's other ways that you can provide it with alarming the windows, but I think it was brought up that that they don't want to provide emergency escape and rescue and they want to have fixed windows, and was bringing up the example of somebody passing something from outside through this window, some form of contraband. And this is tough for a fire official to swallow, thinking that you're going to be going around to different fire departments asking for relief from this section.
No, if I can, the conversation was on the fly, and so there were samples given without due consideration, and so the response was more related to the fact that there is in the I code, in the facilities that we have that are I1 and I2, there is a controlled egress, which is why there was that provision put in where we basically keep occupants in place in the building for control. Under the R4, we said we would not actually ask for any of those state amendments. There were examples brought forth on the fly that I don't think were applicable to what we were speaking of, which is basically that the R4, the code allows for a delayed egress under the model code, and that was sufficient for anything that we were asking for adoption of the R4. And we were not asking for any change from the model code as far as any egress provisions. So whatever's in the model code for R4 is fine. And that was where the conversation went. The question regarding the bedroom windows and the other issues was a side issue that wasn't intended to be relevant to the specific question that was posed at the meeting. And so if that's a whole nother issue that is taken care of, as Al Spalding indicated, through other means. And so I was basically bringing forth how that particular problem has been responded to over the last 20 years in facilities, not how it is now in the model code. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I believe the samples and the issues that we brought forth were not applicable to the question that was being posed at the time.
Yeah, I think it does clarify it because again, this section, you weren't applying it before because it wasn't applicable to I's, but it's applicable to the R4s now. And you're stating that you will comply with the R4s emergency, this 1031 section.
As in the model code, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Micah.
I was going to talk about some of the building code sections, but I think I just wait for the BFP committee to discuss that. I don't think it will affect the vote from the fire code tag. So thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
Ardell?
I just want to raise a question of an interpretation that I also raised at the tag. It doesn't need to be addressed for the purpose of the vote, but it would be helpful for enforcement if the tags could make an opinion or interpretation of whether to treat R4s as a dwelling unit. And that's just, I just want to put that out there because it does impact corridor construction and whether the kitchen and living areas can be open to the corridor.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that discussion?
That is I mean, that was brought forth, as Ardell mentioned. It's a very I would consider it a pretty major topic in review.
Right.
And in fact, I had spent a few hours actually putting together a summary. It's almost an entirely different code interpretation piece that is directly applicable again to the R4, but it by the same virtue, it's also applicable to the I occupancies because the same issue occurs. And so I'm just trying I'm focusing on R4, and this is another version of interpretation that is analogous or associated with it. And I believe Ardell is correct. It needs to be clarified and brought forth. I just want to try to have it be brought forth as a separately reviewed issue, not tying the whole R4 because of that.
And that's why I said recall from the IBC tag, that was discussion, but I was agreed with there too. So I think Ardell's okay with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag it to this group. Yeah, because of the impact that does. I think that does apply and impact how the extent of your fire and life safety systems and where where we have fire and smoke dampers, whether we have sprinklers in the corridors, like all of those will fall out of that interpretation.
In both, as you said, and it's actually in both the I and the R again. And so if there's a way that we can put that forth now, I'd be happy to begin to build that conversation as a dialogue, and whether that's another tag agenda item or whatever. But I agree that as an architect submitting to local building jurisdictions, without that being discussed or reviewed, it's going to be very difficult to resolve. And so we're just basically, but I'm pointing out that that's going to happen for both the R4 and the I1s. It's applicable. It's the same now that we've opened up.
Sure.
It's going to be applicable to both. Any condition on all the condition one, it's likely to be an issue.
Okay, so that is the extent of the IFC proposals. We have made one modification to what the IBC had put together. Any other discussion on the I4 or on the R4 inclusion into the fire code? I'd like to get as a consensus from the IFC IFC tag that we move this forward to the BFP. Actually be returned back to the IBC tag to be able to review the modification we've made. Micah, do you have a question for that, or did I clarify that for you?
I think that's, sorry, when you said it was going to BFP, I was going to ask, and I think you clarified that it's going to go back to the.
Has to go back
code
to the
tag for-
IBC tag.
Thanks.
So I don't necessarily, I don't know if we want to take a vote or not. It's just a consensus item. We can vote and say that we approve these items here. So I'm open for either a motion or a statement of consensus.
This is Paul Clark. I would say I would send a motion to send this back to the tag for review and then send it on to the BFP as a. So I guess, does it come back to us?
If there are changes from the IBC from other than what we've sent back to them, it would come back to us.
So the motion is to send it back to them.
That would be an accepted motion if we want to do that. We're looking for a motion to send it back to the tag, to the IBC tag.
Can I ask a clarification question?
Sure.
So the actual changes between what the fire code tag and the building code tag are to incorporate a provision that has already been reviewed and approved for later inclusion by the same groups. And so is there a way that this can be labeled as inconsequential to the actual approval? Because all we're doing is basically taking an approval of a language that's already been approved and applying it forward.
I don't think the IBC tag reviewed that language. So it would need to have a consensus from them as well.
Okay.
For the definitions.
Yeah, if the definitions have never been reviewed by the
Right, they wouldn't have been, because we were reviewing for the 2021 code and that was a proposal for the 2024. So the tag would not have seen that.
Okay, I see. My point is that everything is now depending upon the timelines, just for want of things that nobody disagrees with. But I will.
At least we can assume that, but until the tag gets, it could be very well they just have a 5 second. I'm just not joking, 5 second, but a 5-minute meeting that basically said, do we agree with the IFC tag? Yes, move it forward.
And I guess
it is a procedural thing. I want to make sure we follow the proper procedure for the path.
Yes, I understand. I as you can tell, I would be frustrated if it takes a month to have a 5-second meeting.
Yep. So that'll be up to Stoyan to be able to get the tag back together real quickly and to get that resolved as soon as possible.
Well, we can't get the tag together this week, and we have the BFP meeting on Friday. So I'm having a little kind of a hard time here, and I will appreciate a feedback on this, but I get this in the agenda for the BFP meeting, but because now we have the IBC tag recommendation and we have the IFC tag recommendation that is a little bit different. So I guess we don't need the BFP committee to discuss this, and we could
provide a briefing to the BFP on what's occurred, so at least they know there's some progress on it, but they wouldn't have any action. Chris, you have a question?
Just a process question, whether it solves potentially some issues. Can the fire code tag and building code tag have different recommendations and have the BFP reconcile those differences?
It's possible, or the council, that's.
I mean, I respect the opinions of everybody on the building code tag, but if we were to come to different recommendations anyways, it would be up to the BFP to choose who's correct from a policy standpoint.
Well, the BFP, yes, but at the same time, the BFP has the authority to do something else different to.
Yeah,
different-
absolutely, right. So right, we're providing input, so we could provide different input than our counterparts on the building code tag.
That's
And
possible.
that's not incorrect process-wise. It's probably not the most polite and best process, but it is factually okay.
I would agree.
So does that mean that I amend my motion to just push this forward to the BFP with our recommendations to include definitions in discussion or kind of review?
That can be made, yes. Micah, you had a quick question?
No quick question. I think that what Chris mentioned could be a path as being a member of the BFP committee, a voting member of the BFP committee. I definitely think that we could put forward different recommendations from the building code tag, or you could put forward different recommendations from the building code tag, and the BFP could reconcile those. I know that folks missing some of the meetings, or at least the last building tag meeting, that there'll be some additional comments on what the building tag recommended and questions. So, I know there'll be additional discussion at the BFP committee meeting anyway. So I think that you could make a recommendation to move this forward with the modification, and they could reconcile those recommendations. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that when I was on chair of the council, I did try to avoid as much discussion at the BFP as possible, but it is a possible path of doing that. So
yeah, I'm always for fewer meetings too. So especially fewer special meetings.
Especially. So our current amendment, our current proposal or motion from Paul is to move forward the proposed changes, the R4 with the changes with adding the definitions to the BF tag for consideration. Do I have a second?
This is Quinn. I'll second that.
Okay, good. Any more discussion?
Yeah, this is Ken. I just have a point of order. What happens to the first one we already approved? The first motion that we already approved.
That change was put into the path that we have. So that basically that was adding that change into our proposed change to the.
No, I'm just wondering, we already approved it to go back to the building code tag and as our, but now we're saying.
We did not take a vote. We didn't get a second or anything for it. So that motion was amended to redirect it to the BFP.
There was a motion for the definition of R4, adding the new definitions.
Right, and that was a separate action to include that into this proposal to go to the BFP. Okay.
All right, so the proposal is not the new is not to go back to the building code tag, just go to BFP, correct?
Go to BFP.
All right.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed, Ken.
Okay, the ayes have it. The proposal will be moved forward to the BFP. So, Soren, you don't have to change your agenda.
I think this was the only agenda item that we had.
Yep, and so for the BFP, you won't have to change the agenda, so we can propose about those two proposals. Recommend that representatives of the ISC tag sit in on the meeting to provide comments to the BFP, so they're aware of what we did here today. Any other actions, Ryan? I think we're that completes it.
No, if you have something else, we're here, but other than that, we don't have anything else on the agenda.
Hey, Storian, just for the record, the BFE meeting is this Friday at 10 o'clock, correct?
The BFP meeting is this Friday at 10 o'clock. The important detail here is that we have one BFP member that is no longer a council member. Corey, he was replaced. And the new, we don't have a replacement yet, so we will be minus 1 person.
Can you clarify the time of the meeting? Because the online posting indicated.
Oh, it's 1
So
o'clock.
it's one-
Sorry. It's 1 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock. Sorry.
Yep. Okay, BFP 1 o'clock Friday.
It's 1 o'clock because we usually have the MVE committee meeting in the morning and the BFP committee meeting afternoon. And this is how the meetings are filed with the code revisor's office. So 1 o'clock.
Okay. If there's any additional questions, issues, other actions? Okay, I call the meeting for the tag completed today, and we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you Friday.
Everybody.